Make sure everything is correct. Good evening, everybody. Thanks again for listening. And just in case you are listening for the first time, my name is Nelson E. Brown, and this is the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I am very excited. I want to wish you guys a happy new year. It is January 5th, 2021. Wow. It is the first show of the new year. This is the first show of the new year for 2021, and I am so excited tonight. Tonight, we are going to have a very special guest. We have Maryland State Senator Dr. Mary Washington with us. She's also a former mayoral candidate for the 2020 election. She is going to be sitting down with us for the second half of the show to talk about the work that she does in Annapolis every day and about her experience and her expertise in the field of education. And with the Kirwan Commission, she's going to tell us a little bit about the Kirwan Commission and the trends that go along with that, because that has been a big debate right now in Annapolis, and it has been for the past few years. I know that the holidays looked a little different this past year, and I know that everybody has been on edge. Everybody has been so stressed out and anxious, but I'm grateful for the opportunity that God has allowed us to see 2021. And it's unbelievable that we've already started a new decade, and that, we've still been able to accomplish so much with all of the adjustments that we've had to make. We've had to remain socially distanced from our loved ones and family members and even our friends. We've had to change the way we work and change the way we attend school. I know for me, just in case you guys don't know again, I'm 21 years old. I'm a sociology student at UMBC. So me taking online classes, me working from home, attending school from home, trying to juggle everything. It's been a challenge. As you guys may know, and just in case you guys don't, my job position was terminated back in September. So, and I've had to uproot myself financially, and I've had to make a lot of moves and a lot of adjustments since then. But I'm still grateful for the fact that God has allowed me to see 2021, and I'm still grateful for you all and for the opportunities that God has given you all to sit before me so that we can all share not just the love of Christ, but everything around us. So I'm going to make a couple of announcements. So for the month of January, we are packed. So we are going to have, again, Maryland State Senator and former mayoral candidate for the 2020 election, Dr. Mary Washington, here with us later on this evening and later on in the show to talk about education and the family structures throughout the city of Baltimore and the 43rd district that she represents, as well as throughout the state of Maryland, and the work that she does down in Annapolis as it relates to that. We are going to have motivational speaker and media, I think mass communications, if I'm not mistaken, student from McDaniel College, Mr. Jordan Davis, here with us next week for an hour-long discussion about toxic masculinity for the hour next week. And for the following week, in the third week of this month, we are going to have Reverend Dr. Alvin Hathaway to talk about the church community, the millennials, and how we can work together in order to bring our community back for 2021, and how we can all pray for each other in the midst of a pandemic, a global pandemic, and everything that has transpired within this last year that we've been under these conditions. And for the last week, on the 26th of this month, we are going to have Mr. Jerry Royce live and Skeet Jones, his protege Skeet Jones, with us to talk about the work that he does in media and in the field of mass communications for the entire hour. So we have a packed show, and I'm still really excited about what's in store. I'm thankful for God for my health and strength. I've had some health-related complications that I've been battling with for the past few months, and I definitely am grateful for I'm thankful for the fact that you guys have continued to pray for me. You guys have continued to support me throughout everything that I've shared with you, and that throughout everything that I've been through. So I'm grateful for the fact that you guys make it your effort, and you take time out of your busy schedule to sit down and listen to me. I never thought that I would be doing this, actually, but I'm grateful for all of you guys. So I want to make that clear. Yeah, I'm appreciative of the fact that you take time out to listen to me. And I never thought that anybody was going to have to, listen to me or hear what I have to say. And I'm actually surprised that, of how many people, have actually taken their time out to, watch me and to listen to me. So, so thank you, Miss Tiffany Barnes, for tuning in. Shout out to my AGR family. I love you guys. And without further ado, we're going to hop right into the discussion tonight. So I shared with you guys that tonight we're going to have a discussion about the Kirwan Commission, but not that, but from a broader perspective, we're going to talk about the field of education and how family dynamics play a part in how we view education, how we love on our children and support our children and their academic journeys and in their future endeavors. So there was an article that was produced by the Maryland Public Policy Institute back in June of 2018, on the 25th of June in 2018, exactly, by Dr. James V. Scholes. And it reads a lot, it talks a lot about the Kirwan Commission, and it offers recommendations to the Maryland public school systems and how they should be funded, and all of the policies that have been recommended or have been implemented. I'm going to read a little bit of it, and then I'm also going to read another article from Psychology Today about understanding family dynamics. So I'm going to begin right now. And it says, as a part of the introduction on the Maryland Public Policy Institute, it says that from 1998 to 2014, Maryland Public Schools increased spending on operating expenses by $6.47 billion, an increase of $3.8 billion in inflation-adjusted dollars. If the state follows the recommendations presented by the Kirwan Commission, a statewide panel that is re-evaluating Maryland public school funding, taxpayers can expect to see education spending continue to increase at a rapid rate in the years to come. The Commission has called for an expansion of pre-K programs, increased teacher pay, more rigorous certification requirements for teachers, including pre-K teachers, and a series of other reforms and initiatives. The exact cost of Commission's recommendations is unknown at the moment, but will likely require billions more in funding for Maryland public schools. The Maryland legislature established the Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education in 2016. The commission, comprised of 25 individuals appointed by various policymakers and education organizations, is also called the Kirwan Commission in recognition of Commission Chair William E. Britt Kirwan, who was chosen by the governor, Senate President, and House Speaker. Other members of the committee include Chester Finn, appointed by the President of the State Board of Education, and Elizabeth Isla Light, appointed by the Maryland PTA. Lawmakers established the commission for two reasons. First was to review the findings of the study on adequacy of funding for education in the state of Maryland. In 2000 and 2001, Eugene Blick, Palak and Associates conducted an adequate study for the state. The report provided suggestions for revising the state's funding system. Following the release of the report, the legislature passed the Bridge to Excellence in Public Schools Act in 2002. That legislation led to a new funding formula and a significant increase in education funding. The act also called for a follow-up study to be conducted approximately 10 years after the act was established. The follow-up study, also conducted by Eugene Blick, Palak and Associates, was released in 2016. The study on adequacy report called for an increase of $2.9 billion in state and local dollars, a 29% increase in funding. It also called for various adjustments in the state's funding formula. The second task of the commission was to provide recommendations on preparing students in the state to meet the challenges of a changing global economy, to meet the state's workforce needs, to be prepared for post-secondary education in the workforce, and to be successful citizens in the 21st century. To date, the work of the Commission has fallen mostly in the second category. In January of 2018, the Commission released a preliminary report calling on the state to develop initiatives in 5 key areas: early childhood education, high-quality teachers and leaders, college and career readiness pathways, more resources for at-risk students, governance and accountability. The report did not call for a specific level of funding, but given the policies recommended in the report, the cost would be substantial. Now, I'm going to piggyback on that, but before I do, I'm going to read an article from Psychology Today that I just discussed about understanding family dynamics. And after I finish reading, I'm going to speak a little bit about how education and the family go hand in hand, how the dynamics of the family structure coincide with children in their academic journeys and in their professional lives as they continue to grow and prosper in various areas and in aspects of their well-being. So it says, from this article is from Psychology Today, remind you, it says that understanding family dynamics, it says close family relationships afford a person better health and well-being, as well as lower rates of depression and disease throughout a lifetime. But in many families, getting along isn't a given. The interaction between various members is at the core of these complicated dynamics. We may joke about the stereotypical sources of disharmony, the obnoxious uncle and the never-do-well son, but factors like environment and sibling rivalries do emerge when considering the viability and stability of family networks. Nowadays, society accepts and condones the many types and forms of family. The single-parent household, for example, was frowned upon as a travesty of civil society, but 22 million children live with a single parent, more of whom are women. The only child family was also seen as a sad and lonely configuration. However, these children are hailed as creative and resilient and are doing just fine. We also have blended households with a mash-up of step-relatives and brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, and whoever else comes with them. And the relations are not easy on its members. The questions of discipline and bias and rules come into play with more heartache than simplicity. In addition, there are the families that we choose. A grandparent or aunt may be the head of the household, or perhaps a couple chooses not to have children, and they have the right to call themselves family as well. And don't forget, close friends are sometimes way closer to us than any family member can ever be. So I'm going to pause right there, and I'm going to just piggyback on a lot of things that I've shared. So I want to talk about the family dynamics that we have. I know that, especially in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic, we are on lockdown. So we are forced to deal with our family members, especially our immediate family members in our households. We are not allowed to go anywhere. And if we are, we have protocols and safety measures that have been implemented by the state and by the federal government, in a sense, where, we can't go to certain places without having our masks, without being socially distanced from one another. And I know that it's getting very, very complicated for people. And I think that a lot of people are getting a little bit careless about this, because I see the way people are in stores, at banks, and at the places that are considered to be essential for workers and for people who live in our state and throughout our communities from a national perspective. But I just want to know what the family dynamics are like now, because I know that this is still a very challenging time for a lot of students who are forced to adapt to a virtual learning environment. A lot of students, especially young students, elementary school students, grade school students, a lot of them have to adapt to a virtual learning environment. A lot of them have to be affiliated with members of their immediate household. They have to deal with a lot of their home life, a lot of aspects of their home life. And I know that that's not always a good thing. A few months ago, I had Miss Elizabeth Meredith that talked about child abuse and who talked about domestic violence as a domestic violence survivor and advocate who worked in that field of criminal justice for the past 30 years and retired at the end of 2020. So I know that this experience of being home, being in a virtual learning environment, teleworking, I know that it's not great for all families. I know that many people have lost their jobs. Millions of people have been out of work since the pandemic started. Millions of people have a difficult time trying to go to work and educate their children at the same time, their sons and daughters. They have to have all of these resources in order to gain the access that they need to, to stay focused and to be on task and to complete their work and to keep everything in line so that they won't fall behind academically once this pandemic ends. But the question that I often wonder is, are students going to fall behind when this pandemic is over? How many students are going to fall behind? Is this pandemic going to change the way we think about the school systems, the Kirwan Commission, more specifically? Is this pandemic going to make us think and force us to think about the ways in which we deal with our family, and then the ways in which we even support and uplift our family members throughout this difficult time, especially, between parents and students and their students and their children. I just want to know what the family dynamics will be like once this is all over, because I know that every single child may not have the best relationship with their parents, and that often does have an effect on their academic performance in school. I know that everybody is not happy about being in the house. Everybody's not happy about being socially distanced from everybody. Everybody's not happy about working from home and not having to commute to work. Some people, you don't know what they're going through at home. Many children are in abusive circumstances. Many husbands and wives are in abusive circumstances. Many of your employees, many of your coworkers, many of your relatives, maybe even distant relatives, may be in abusive circumstances. So you just never know what people are going through, especially during times like these. So I think that our level of sensitivity, not just to the parents and the adults, but also to the children, the students who are forced to adapt to learning environments that make them uncomfortable. Students, they have no choice but to just go along, because falling behind will only worsen things. But I know that Dr. Washington is going to join us in a few minutes, but I just want to ask you guys, and I want you guys to just generate some thoughts. What is going to happen after we come out of this? Are we going to make it a duty, make it our effort to improve the relationships we have with our family members? Are parents going to be more sympathetic and understanding to their kids in terms of, their academic lives and then their journeys? Are they going to be more supportive and encouraging? Are they going to volunteer and be more active in their children's academic lives? And are students going to make it their effort to, work with their parents and work with their teachers, and even us as a community? Are we going to make more of an effort to make sure that our children have what they need so that they can prosper and grow into the young adults that they're destined to become? So these are some of the things that we have to think about when we talk about education and the family structures throughout the state of Maryland, and throughout our city, throughout our counties, throughout our communities, from a worldwide point of view. I can be open and transparent about this. My mom was an active volunteer when I was in school, from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. Every parent-teachers conference, every chance she got, she was right there. And she was helping my classmates with reading and writing. She was very active. She was really passionate about helping my classmates succeed. And by her being active when their parents were not active, by building a rapport with my classmates to the point where they enjoyed, her presence. They enjoyed her helping them. They enjoyed the fact that, she came in there and that she volunteered and she did everything from the heart. That showed how much she cared, not just about me, but that showed how much she cared about my classmates, because she's very passionate about education and she's very passionate about watching young people prosper. So that's just an example. So I'm going to brag a little bit. That's just an example of just how parents can be more involved in their children's academic careers and in their academic journeys. My mom is just an example of one of those parents who was involved in my academic life. and throughout my academic journey from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. And she was an avid volunteer, and she helped a lot of my students when they were struggling in subjects related to reading and writing, when their parents were inactive or chose not to participate in their academic journeys. She was their advocate. She was their strong advocate. And I think that everybody needs an advocate. Every child needs an advocate. I think we all need to validate each other. I think that we all need to be in a position where we can uplift each other, especially during times like these. The level of sensitivity should be at its highest when we speak with one another, in terms of the ways in which we treat one another. So I just think that that's imperative. Because I know that some people took that for granted in the past. Now, I'm waiting for Dr. Washington to come on, but I think I'm going to read her bio, and if she just happens to come on, I'm going to jump right into it. So just excuse me as I look at her bio. Okay, here we go. So, State Senator Mary Washington is an advocate for Maryland's 43rd District as a legislator, professor, ally, public policy leader, and trailblazer. Born in Philadelphia, Mary Washington began her professional career teaching at a Catholic elementary school. Her scholarly interests and dedication to serving at-risk populations and urban communities brought her to Baltimore, where she earned her PhD and MA in sociology from the Johns Hopkins University. Dr. Washington began her academic career as an assistant professor at Lee University, which was awarded postgraduate fellow, and she was awarded, postgraduate fellow at the Population Studies Center of the University of Pennsylvania, and is currently a member of the part-time faculty at the Maryland Institute College of Art. And let's see. As a current senator and over her 2 terms as a member of the Maryland House of Delegates, she has distinguished herself as a leader, fighting for affordable access to water, protecting families at risk of losing their homes to unfair tax sales and foreclosures, making sure Baltimore City schools receive fair and equitable funding, and helping unaccompanied homeless youth get the services and support they need. Senator Washington has passed landmark legislation that bars the inhumane practice of shackling female prisoners during labor and delivery, sponsored and passed the nation's first law protecting social media, Facebook password privacy, secured stronger safeguards from electronic harassment via text or direct messaging, won new restrictions on price gouging and abusive treatment of consumers by rent-to-own stores targeting low-income and minority communities, and passed the state's first legislation establishing the community schools model as the statewide strategy for addressing concentrated poverty. Her work as a legislator has earned the trust of her colleagues and constituents on budget and tax issues, as well as the impact of funding choices on Maryland's families. And her current and previous appointments include her being a member of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee, the House Appropriations Committee, as a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. She was the first director of the Baltimore City Housing Department's City Stat program. She was the interim director of Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance. She was the associate director of the Parks and People Foundation, the president of the Abel Improvement Association. And in Annapolis, she currently serves as the Senate chair of the Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness, the Joint Committee on Children.
Classroom. The Baltimore is the best laboratory classroom. You can learn so many things about the world. I grew up in Philadelphia, so living in a city and teaching in a city and now representing the interests of a city is not new, but it's just really exciting. It's a great place to learn and grow and do the best you can. didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just excited to be here.
Yes, yes. I mean, I understand. So I was going to jump into it a little bit. I know that the Kerwin Commission is definitely a topic of conversation, and it's a huge debate that we are all just we're all at a standstill right now. I know that it's been an ongoing debate for a few years now. So could you tell the listeners a little bit about that, because it's relevant to what a lot of students throughout the state of Maryland and throughout our communities are going through right now?
Well, if you don't mind, I just want to just tell everyone I'm really excited to be here. I'm State Senator Mary Washington. Before that, I was Delegate Mary Washington. And actually, next week, I'll be celebrating my 10th year in office. I can't believe it. I got elected in 2011, and so much has happened. And you're right, in the field of education, but so much. The second year that I was in office, we ended the death penalty. We, in education, we expanded the DREAM Act to allow all Marylanders, regardless of their immigrant status, to be able to have in-state tuition. We passed marriage equality so that, love is love. And we've just done so many things over the last 10 years. But you're right, Mr. Brown, Nelson, that throughout all of this, education remains a priority in our state. But unfortunately, our funding formulas didn't follow that. I mean, we funded education, but really not at the level that we needed to. Particularly when you look at disproportionate impacts of Black and Brown communities, of rural communities that are low income, the jurisdictions just frankly just not having the financial support that they needed from the state, who has an obligation to provide not just adequate, but we believe quality education, to be able to have the state's support combined with local taxes to really provide a 21st century education. We just weren't doing that. So the Kerwin Commission, I'd sort of wind back 3 years, was convened, and it brought educators from across the state, researchers from across the country, elected leaders, local leaders, to go around the state and talk about public education, to study public education, to compare what other countries are doing, to look at what other states are doing. And what we found was that and that we needed almost up to $3 billion additional dollars to bring so it's about 2.9, to bring our school systems in par with their peers. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But when you think about how much we spend on other things, whether it's tax breaks or just now even seeing what we're spending on healthcare, these are all priorities. But we need to make sure that public education is that. So the Kerwin Commission was a group of people that met and held and took the testimony of young people, of children talking about not having access to white screens, not having access to brand new textbooks. There was also there was a lot of talk about the infrastructure, the buildings not being in the shape that they need to be in. And so the Kerwin Commission gave the General Assembly a report and said, this is what we needed. And what now as the blueprint for Maryland future, they call it the Kerwin bill, embodies that. So it's not just funding for direct education, but it's funding to make sure that we have more social workers, making sure that we have more tutorial programs, making sure that we pay our educators more, making sure that we provide a better pathway from college to the field of teaching, and compensating them for the professionals that there are, making sure that we have more students of color, Black and Brown students, decide to take teaching up as their profession. So this, and then also making sure that we fund something called a community school model, which looks at schools not just as educational institutions, but as hubs for the community, and making sure that we have coordinators that can help look at the assets in the community, build on those assets, but also look and see what their challenges are. So unfortunately, we passed that bill, and it was bipartisan, and it was exciting, and it took a lot of time to get there. And we did that last year. We did it, before COVID. And unfortunately, our governor vetoed that bill. That governor said that education is not a priority. The governor said that they're not willing to spend the money that we know we need to spend on our young people. And so one of the first things we're going to take up when we start the legislative session next Wednesday is to override that governor's veto and to restore the funding, to restore the programs, the creativity, the work that we know needs to be done.
Yes. Yeah.
I know that was a lot. I was just trying to give you 3 years in.
Yes, I mean, I understand. It was very informative because I know that because I'm a sociology student too. So I'm yes, so I'm studying sociology at UMBC right now. So that's what I'm pursuing my degree in. I'm specializing more in the healthcare industry and in the healthcare field. I worked for the Maryland Department of the Environment for 4 years, from 2016 until last year. So I've been doing a lot of studies with the field of healthcare, especially because it's imperative now. But I also I studied education, and I also studied family structures, and I know that education and the family, they go hand in hand.
Yes.
When we talk about education, because it's not about the teachers, it's not about the students, it's not about the administration, it's about all of us working together. So what does that look like? I know that you represent the 43rd jurisdiction in the city of Baltimore. So what does that jurisdiction look like? Because I'm personally not familiar with that, because I don't live in that jurisdiction. But what does that look like? Because you're in there every day. You've been in the classroom yourself. You know all it is to know about that.
Well, I don't know if I know all there is to know, but I teach at the Maryland Institute College of Art. Officially, state legislators were part-time. And so for 90 days from January through April, we go to Annapolis and we make laws, we make policy. We engage full-time, more than full-time in Annapolis. And then for 9 months of the year, we are back in our communities. And we go back to our jobs. Many of us have other jobs that we put on hold during that time and then go back to those jobs. And we do both. We are both representatives, policymakers, community organizers, doing what we can. And then we take that learning and use that to build our policy. I'm a sociologist, so I teach sociology at MICA, as I said, the Maryland Institute College of Art. And and you read my bio. I got my PhD at Hopkins, and that's what brought me to Maryland. And so, sociology and understanding how in different institutions work together to get us where we are. They can be used to explain where we've failed as society, but it can also tell us where the successes are. And I find that there's a lot of discussion about what is lacking in our communities, particularly in urban communities, but there's a lot of resiliency. And unfortunately, things like COVID-19 has exacerbated the racism, the social inequalities, the sexism, all of those isms that we as sociologists know about. COVID-19 has exacerbated those, but I think it's also given us a really a clear opportunity to correct them. So I represent the 43rd Legislative District in Northeast Baltimore, and it truly is a microcosm of the state and the city. I represent some of the wealthiest precincts in Baltimore and some of the lowest income. We have parks and we have concrete sidewalks. We have community gardens and we, in some places, have overflowing trash. We have recreation centers where there's lots of volunteers and, grandmothers are doing work and raising children. And then we also have households that might be considered sort of your normative households where you have two parents and both are working. We have all kinds of people in Baltimore. So that's the biggest thing to say. And at the same time, we also know that there is so much more we need to do to support families that are truly being challenged. So I have 4 academic institutions of higher education in my district. I have Morgan State. The great Morgan State University is within the boundaries of my district. Loyola University is within the boundaries of my district. Notre Dame, University of Maryland, Notre Dame is in my district, and the Johns Hopkins University is also in my district within that boundaries. There's Station North Arts Gallery. We've got portions of some communities that are artists. We have working class people. We have students. We have, stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads. We have, people who are seniors. We have some great senior centers. We've got, I just love the 43rd District. We have everything you possibly could want. Cafes, bagel shops, but also a corner store where, if you want to get fries, and Royal Farms chicken. We have designer fancy food, and we have good old food that we all grew up on. So we've got some light industry actually in our job, manufacturing is in our district, and many academic institutions, as I said, churches, synagogues. And small synagogues, and there's actually a small mosque in the district as well. So Nelson, I have some of everything, and that's, I think, what makes our district strong. It's also what makes our city strong. And thanks for helping me get that message out there to all of you who are listening. That anything that you would need and want to grow, to raise a family, to learn, to make change in the world, to practice some ideas that you have about improving the conditions of people, come and do that here with us in Baltimore.
Yes, and I know that. I know how diverse the city of Baltimore is, and in every neighborhood. I know that you are representing a district that is very diverse. You have your small businesses, you have homeowners, you have schools, you have the faith-based institutions that you talked about, and I know that it's a very diverse city, and a lot of people don't get to see the qualities of the city because of what the media perpetuates oftentimes. So I know that you ran for mayor last year. So, and I know that things have been really, really difficult, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, with how you guys have been able to navigate through everything. So down in Annapolis, what are some of the things that you guys have been able to do in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic? Because I know that, especially with the virtual learning environment and with, many of our adults and parents teleworking, I know that it has complicated a lot of things. So what have you guys been able to do in order to combat that?
Well, and thanks for asking about my mayoral race, because ever since I've been a young professional, I've followed the work. And so some of the work that I described that needs to happen in Baltimore, that was an opportunity I felt to follow that work. I've been a community association president. I was director at Parks and People Foundation, and then now a state senator. And every single position I've taken, I've been able to help move people, I hope, help more people and expand and make a bigger impact on the city that I love so much. So in mid-March, when I had to withdraw from the race, the work wasn't calling me to keep campaigning. It didn't say keep campaigning. It said you have to serve and advocate for the people of the 43rd District in the time when COVID was new. It was a new household term, and people were really scared, and they were losing their jobs, and they didn't have access to critical resources when the lockdown began. So since then, I started something we call the 43rd District Covert Response Team, which helped deliver food, to older folks and families that were struggling. People just were scared to go outside, and they should not have gone outside, and trying to figure out, how do I get my medication? How do I get PPE? What is PPE? And neighbors rallied around that and formed. There was a local response teams all over the city, and just being neighborhood based, picking up groceries, picking up medicines from the pharmacy. And then that also allowed me to continue to advocate statewide for support of our most vulnerable in need. As you might imagine, what was happening to our young people in foster care, what was happening to our young people within our juvenile justice system. We needed to make sure that, with the shutdown, that, the folks that were keeping an eye on them and advocating them, we needed to make sure that they still had access to it, their attorneys, make sure they have access to their social workers or their families in a safe way. So we've really, I think, found what it means to be community. I think we have an opportunity to really sort of push ourselves. And now, as we're seeing that it's not something that's just 6 months, 3 months, 90 days, that this is a new way of living that we need to adjust to. And so we need to figure out, how do we build community? How do we do our advocacy in a world through a mask? How do we do that, making sure we wash our hands? How do we not stigmatize people who are sick, but at the same time keep those that we love and care about well? How do we address something that's coming up more so than ever? Increases in domestic violence are real. Increases in mental health challenges, particularly among young people. Increases in suicide from isolation. These are all things that COVID and the economic and social challenges presented, by an economic downturn that is ongoing, that we're going to have to work on and figure that out. So that's in my district, but that is policy work that I will, with my other colleagues, bring that work to Annapolis as well.
Yes, and I know that the work that you guys do down in Annapolis, a lot of people don't understand how difficult it is to actually do the work you do, because a lot of people think that it's just a snap of a finger. Like, I propose this bill, yay or nay, and it's not. It's not really that simple. A lot of people don't understand what the legislative sessions are about. A lot of people, you have to actually do the work, and you have to actually be there, and be present, Yeah. And I think that a part of
conversations, like you're having those conversations, at the end of the day, it's 188 people. We're legislators, we're 47 senators and 141 delegates, but we're people, and we have families, and we have hopes and dreams and biases and limitations, and talents and skills and insights, and all of that is debated and discussed and comes out in the pieces of legislation. And in any given year, over 2,300 pieces of legislation come through. So that's a lot. That's a lot of ideas and a lot of things. And we have to, but only about in an average year, only about 800 or so of those bills become law. But it takes advocacy. It takes the involvement of all the people that are listening to this. You're educating yourself, but reaching out to your legislators and helping us. As I said earlier, we're part-time. Your Congress people are full-time. Often your council people are full-time, and they have large staffs. We are historically and continue to be what's considered a citizen legislature. That's a hybrid model where we are in for 90 days and we're still sort of funded in that way. And I have 1 or 2 staff people who work part-time, because the old model was you just went to Annapolis for 90 days, you passed the bills, and you came back home and you really didn't do anything else. Well, it's not like that. And especially since we shut down in March for COVID, it has been constant, helping people get their unemployment benefits. I'm sure a lot of you watching this know people that have been laid off and they're still trying to get benefits from the state. So we're not in session. So we can't pass a law to improve the way that we're processing employment benefits, but we write letters, we hold hearings, we advocate and bring your voices up to the governor so that he can hear that. And we've been able to work with this governor on some of these things, but there's some work that still needs to be done. You mentioned the digital divide earlier that exists for Baltimore City students, and also I know it actually is around the state. And in my city, there's about 19,000 households with children who lack wired, reliable internet connection. So there was already an achievement divide, right? We already know that. And now this on top of that they can't get access to it, and gaps of internet connection. Half of African American households and less than half of Latino ones have wired broadband access, compared to 75% of white households, and about 43% of families with incomes lower than 25,000 have wired access, compared to 87.2% of families that make more than $150,000 a year. So like a little less than half of the lowest income households with children have access to computers, compared to 92% of the highest income children. So, we have racial divides, but we have economic and access divides that we have to address. And so remote learning during COVID is creating issues of learning loss, especially in these vulnerable students.
Yes, and I know that the digital divide is definitely becoming more and more evident as we move further and further into this pandemic. But I know that your legislative session you guys start next Wednesday, you said, right? Next week on Wednesday. Yes, so it's next week on Wednesday at 12 noon. So I know that you guys already you guys already know what you're going to do. So what is my last two questions are,
what are you doing?
yes. So my last questions are like, what is your goal for the legislative session for the 2021? What is the overall thing that you want to get across right now that you think is imperative for the governor to listen to and to implement?
Can I just answer that in two ways? I want to just first start by just saying that we really need to look at our public school system. We need to close the gap on the educational disparities for Black and Brown children and low-income children in Baltimore City, but also in all urban areas, but in our rural areas. There's often this sort of conflict or this false dichotomy and sort of creating Baltimore as something that is unlike the rest of the state. And it's just not true. I mean, we definitely are overrepresented in a lot of the things that challenge our state, but we're also not unlike some of the poorer, more urban areas that are across the state of Maryland that share our challenges, and that we need to make sure that our budget priorities focus on prioritizing education over incarceration. So one of the important things that we're going to be doing as a state legislator is really taking the insights and the momentum and the energy of social movement towards racial justice that has occurred concurrently with COVID, and making sure that we reform our criminal justice system, and we shift our priorities to focusing more on funding public education and less on incarceration. Good law enforcement, good opportunities, and we need good tools to make sure that our laws that we pass are adhered to, and then that those that break those laws and break the public trust are decrease the number of people that do that. But right now there is an imbalance so for example, in Baltimore City, where the city funds over 90% of the Baltimore Police Department, but less than 20% of our city public schools. We have to take that and look at that, the statewide implications of that. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be reforming the criminal justice system across the state of Maryland. And I'm on the education, health, and the environment. So there's education, but there's also the environment. We still have huge challenges with air quality. And we need to make sure that the air is clean and that someday our water is swimmable, and that people have access to clean, affordable water. So that's a priority that will continue, that we have to focus on. This again, so we're going to override the veto for the blueprint for Maryland's future, and the school construction bill. I'm also going to be overriding a bill of mine that passed that would have required the state to provide a women's only pre-release facility. So when we talk about criminal justice and we talk about, it's often we focus on increasing fines or making things felonies. We don't really look at what are we doing to make sure that once people serve their time, that they can be reintegrated into society, and making sure that there's housing and job opportunities. One of the things I found, along with advocates that have been working on this for years, is that the state of Maryland has something called pre-release. And these are centers where somebody's getting ready to be released from prison. They're not living, they no longer live in the main facility that they lived in that was in their incarceration. And it's not a halfway house, but it's this other space where they can go to work, come home. They're still serving time, but it's a way of transitioning home. Well, Maryland has 7 of these for men. There's 8 for men and 0, none, nada for women. So we passed the bill last year to mandate that Maryland has a separate facility for women, and that would drastically reduce recidivism and really set them up for success. And another bill that I'm going to be looking at is prohibiting flavored tobacco in our communities. I know some of you might vape or know people that vape, but it's, as the CDC estimates, that Maryland spends about $2.7 billion annually on healthcare costs associated with smoking. Now, remember, that was similar to a number that I said earlier, which said that we were about $2.8 billion short on what we need to spend for education. If we can reduce what we spend in healthcare costs related to smoking, some of those monies can be redirected to education. So we know flavored tobacco products lure kids into a lifelong addiction. There's over 15,000 flavors, including mint and menthol, e-cigarettes. So I have a bill that would outlaw flavored, you can't have gummy bear, flavored, cotton candy flavored cigarettes, e-cigarettes, none of that. It gets rid of that because it's disproportionately targeting low income and Black and brown communities. And so I'm excited about that. So, and then also the final I'll say about another bill is regulating third-party energy. Pennies matter. When they deregulated energy suppliers, you've got these third parties that go in and say, hey, we're going to offer you a deal. We're going to give you a gift card. And then they sign up. And so you have a short period where the energy bill is less, but then you don't read the fine print and you see that they have the ability to jump those bills, to increase those bills. And low-income families wind up paying more than $500 more a year under this deregulated model than if they had just stuck with their regular supplier. So we're looking to change that bill. So that's some of those things. But there's so much that the legislature is going to be doing, and most of it has to do with addressing our COVID, our healthcare, our public safety, and our education priorities for our state.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on my show, and I want to thank you, and I will be following all of this,
Yes.
in the months to come. And like I said before, I'm a sociology student, and one of the reasons why I did establish the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio is so that little boys and young men like me could have a voice on subjects like these, and so that we could talk about subjects that matter. And so I want to thank you. I am very appreciative that you took time out of your busy schedule to sit down and talk to me. And I know that the listeners felt informed and inspired and uplifted by a lot of the things that you shared. So I just wanted to put that out there before I let you go.
Well, thank you. And also I want to put out that, you're a student and there's other students. As I told you, I'm a faculty member. I love working with young people. One of the things that just have driven me to To be a legislator is to really teach people the process. And it's better when all of us have the information that we need to make good decisions. And part of that is learning and researching and be exposed. So, Mr. Brown, if you ever want to do a day in the life or follow us around, and maybe we can get somebody to, I'll hold a, since we're social distancing and everything, all of our internships are virtual, but maybe you can figure out a way to allow you to actually see what we're doing, to attend a hearing, to know what it's like to write up legislation or to draft an amendment, and to be a part of this wonderful democratic process that's not just voting but actually making laws and governing. So I invite you to join me in that. So anytime you want to do that, let's do it.
Yes, and I'm very open to doing that, and I'll be keeping in touch for future opportunities. So thank you again, Dr. Washington, for coming on my show, and I'll definitely talk to you soon.
Okay, take care. Good night, everyone.
Okay, well, that wraps up another edition of the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. That was Dr. Washington, Maryland State Senator, Dr. Washington with us talking about education and the family structures, not just within the city of Baltimore in the 43rd district that she represents, but also throughout our country and throughout our communities worldwide. So I want to thank you all for listening again. Follow me on all of the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, at Nelson E. Brown and at Nelson Brown. I'm still at work on my next books in my book series, books number 3 and 4. I'm creating content for those. I'm working with my editor and illustrator. So I want to just give you guys a heads up that you will be seeing more books from me in the future. I'm trying to release another one on the 14th of May, my birthday. So, I want you guys to just stay encouraged, stay inspired, stay uplifted, stay prayerful, and I will see you guys next week. We are going to be sitting with motivational speaker and communication student Jordan Davis. So Mr. Jordan Davis is going to have an hour-long discussion with us about toxic masculinity in today's culture. So that's going to be a really, really great discussion, and I encourage you all to just tune in and listen, and to just chime in whenever you feel as though you need to. So make an appointment to meet me back here next week on Tuesday, January 12th at 6 p.m. and from 6 to 7 p.m. I can't wait to see what you guys say, and I'm really excited about sitting down with Mr. Davis to talk about this subject. So I love you guys. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I hope that you guys have a blessed evening, and I hope you guys can continue to stay safe and stay prayerful, and to just enjoy yourselves, and to just think positive thoughts, and to just to stay together as much as you can with all the protocols in place, and to just check on your loved ones, family members, and your friends throughout these difficult times. So I love you guys, and take care.